into the Doklam standoff, the government of India has called an all-party meeting which just ended to share details with the opposition. Briefings were held both by the Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary at Home Minister Rajnath Singh's residence today. The two presentations reiterated India's position that China had violated Bhutan's territory in Doklam and that India had acted not just in Bhutan's interest but also in its own. The Chinese road construction on the plateau threatens the security of India's Siliguri corridor. The meeting was called in the wake of China's allegations that India's armed forces entered its sovereign territory. The area in question is near the Tri-Junction where the borders of India, China and Bhutan meet. The duration of the current logjam has raised worries that the situation could prove beyond fixing through diplomatic channels. Despite China's aggressive posturing over the last month, though, India has attempted to play down this matter. The fact that the External Affairs Ministry has rubbished reports that a de-escalation in the region was off the cards is very, very significant. It has also rubbished reports that India was engaged in building up its military presence in Doklam.
There was a conversation on a range of issues between the two leaders at Hamburg, and also the fact that the diplomatic channels remain available to both sides.
That's what Gopal Bagle said yesterday. This comes within a day of Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar's statement that India and China have resolved differences in the past diplomatically and there is no reason why they cannot do the same this time. China in response did say that this is not like the previous instances. So once again, upping the ante. On your screen, images of the all-party meeting, all those leaders gathering to talk about the situation and to discuss India's response. Joining us this evening on Gravitas, Brahma Chelani. He is the Professor of Strategic Studies at the Center for Policy Research. And WION's Ramesh Ramachandran, Senior Diplomatic Correspondent. Good evening and thank you both for joining us. Ramesh, let me begin with you. You were at the venue where this meeting was held. What was discussed? What did the government tell opposition leaders?
Indeed, Palki, I am still standing outside the residence of the Indian Home Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh. And the meeting with the opposition leaders began at about 5 p.m. local time and it ended about half an hour ago. So the meeting lasted more than 3 hours. Now, the sum and substance of the meeting from my vantage point is that on the issue of external security, namely the standoff at the border between and among India, China and Bhutan, all opposition parties are one with the government. They say national security is non-negotiable, and to that extent, they are willing to forge the broadest possible consensus cutting across political lines to lend their voice, as it were, in support of the government. Where the divergence comes in, Palki, is on the issue of internal security, namely the situation obtaining in Jammu and Kashmir, especially in light of the terrorist attack on the Amarnath pilgrims, which happened on Monday last. And this is one issue on which one can expect a stormy session of the monsoon session of Parliament, which is beginning on Monday, with leaders from the opposition parties telling WION that they have concerns on the issue of the lapses in security. They want to fix responsibility and make the government accountable for the lapses. And to that extent, they say they will raise the issue in Parliament. They can also be expected to raise the issue of the standoff at China. But on that issue, as I said, they are one with the government and they would want to speak in one voice.
That's good to know. Reassuring, certainly. Brahma Chelani, over the past 48 hours, have you seen any signs of this cooling down?
From Beijing, the rhetoric remains bellicose, but it's clear that China has painted itself in a corner. Militarily, it has no credible option. So diplomatically, it has to search for a face saver. The only face saver that China can get is to agree on a mutual withdrawal of all troops from Doklam Plateau. That would be a restoration of status quo ante, the situation that prevailed before the PLA began building a strategic highway through Bhutan's Doklam Plateau.
Right. Ramesh, is there a sense that the government of India wants to play down the standoff, but at the same time not give an inch to China?
Indeed, Palki, that is the sense one gets as well. But just to bring our viewers up to speed with the latest coming in from the spokesperson of the Indian Foreign Ministry, Palki, Mr. Gopal Bagle has barely moments ago issued a statement on the all-party meeting. And if I can quote the relevant extracts from that statement, he says all participants express support, strong support for India's approach and also for the need for national unity. Importance of India and China to remain engaged through diplomacy was underlined, and that the unique nature of very close and long-standing India-Bhutan relationship was recognized. So, Palki, to put things into context here, the sense one gets is that the opposition parties will speak in the same voice with the government on the issue of the border standoff, but on the issue of internal security, they want government to take the dialogue forward with all the stakeholders in Jammu and Kashmir.
All right, a fair bit of diplomacy is there as well. This is from the MEA, and we'll have to wait and see what the opposition parties have to say. But Brahmachalani, in the 80s, there was a similar standoff that stretched on to almost a year. Do you see this one heading the same way, or do you see this being resolved after the October Congress?
What happened 30 years ago at Samdurchu sector of Arunachal Pradesh was a very major episode. We've never had that kind of a incident on that scale ever since that episode. What's happening now actually is pretty small compared to what happened then. But I think the present episode still has a risk of escalation to conflict. But I think, unlike what happened earlier, 30 years ago, in the present episode, when the harsh winter sets in by December, January, both sides will have to retreat. They will not be able to deploy troops on Doklam Plateau. So harsh winter will force a mutual retreat, thereby restoring status quo ante, and also frustrating China's plan to build a road through Doklam Plateau.
Right, mutual retreat seems to be the only way forward, Ramesh, and it seems that both sides are now looking for a face saver, having taken a very firm position.
Indeed, Palki, you couldn't have put it better. And just to take off from the point where Professor Chelani left, both sides are indicating, especially the Indian side, that diplomatic channels are available and will continue to be used going forward. But the problem emanates from the heightened rhetoric, or the ratcheting up of the rhetoric by the Chinese of late, especially from their official media, especially the People's Daily, for instance, which went on to invoke the very editorial that it published way back on 22nd September 1962, barely a month before the 62 war between India and China. So clearly things are not looking up as far as the bilateral thread of the relationship goes. But that said, India consistently maintains that such issues have been resolved in the past, and there is no reason to believe that this issue will also not be resolved at the earliest. Remember, Palki, the National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, is expected to visit China in a couple of weeks from now for the BRICS summit, which will be held in China this year. And one can expect him to have some discussions, informal or formal, we don't know yet, but he can certainly be expected to have discussions on the issue of the standoff, especially given the fact that the National Security Advisor of India is the special representative for the India-China boundary question and talks on it.
Right. Thanks very much, Ramesh Ramachandran, for bringing us those updates, and Brahmachalani for your insight on the subject. Thank you for joining us on Gravitas.